All right, here we are again. So last time I kind of stepped out of the box a little bit and talked about Battlestar Galactica and the relationship of Star Wars to Battlestar Galactica. Now I'm going to kind of come back in. I shouldn't be touching my face, but anyways, I'm going to come back in and talk about Star Wars only again, but this time I'm going to talk about it from something that's, again, not toys, but something that's in my collection and something that a lot of us do collect. I thought I'd go over a little bit of the history of it and some of the ones in my collection just to kind of give you an idea that it's still a very thriving part of the collecting world in Star Wars, and just to see kind of what you thought. And so what we're going to talk about today are trading cards. So this setup, this is a CAS setup of all five of the series of Star Wars bubblegum cards that were put out. This is a fantastic way of displaying these sets. I saw somebody had an idea a while ago and thought, oh, I absolutely have to do this. And so these are the Star Wars, and again, because of their popularity, this was the first series that came out. They had to release all these other ones, and we'll talk about each of these series in a little bit detail. And then this bled over into The Empire Strikes Back. There was only 3 series in that collection. Then it goes into Return of the Jedi, which I'm actually not going to go over. In fact, I'm not even going to go over Empire Strikes Back, just because, maybe I will at a time in the future, but not at this time. All right. So we'll start with Star Wars. So a little bit of background material is that, believe it or not, part of the Kenner family was a company called Donruss. Donruss has been putting out sports cards since the 50s. And they were actually given the opportunity, at least they were presented with the idea, hey, we're going to make these toys. Would you want to make trading cards? Well, at the time, the last, I think, big science fiction trading card that had come out is actually Star Trek. There's several others that were out there, but Star Trek was in the 76 or so and wasn't very successful. And so Donruss was not keen on the idea, and so actually turned it down. Even though part of the Kenner family, which was interesting. And so Topps was also given the proposal for, hey, why don't you do this? And they actually wrestled around with it for a while and thought, well, we don't want to do this. This is, they haven't been successful in the past, so what makes me think they would be successful in the future? But finally they were convinced that, hey, this was a good idea. So, of course, Topps took it over. So anyway, of course they put these cards out, and in 77 they put out the first series, which is the cover. You see the 3PO here. Now this series, there were 66 cards. They were the blue borders. In fact, the 5, it goes blue, red, yellow, green, matching the cover, and then of course orange, which matches the color here. So if you look at that, the colors are somewhere in the packaging. Now, the letters for red, again, anyways, you can look at that. But that was always very interesting that some color on the packaging did match the card color. And the cards have a very distinctive border. It's this kind of starburst pattern border, which we'll actually look at in detail. But anyway, so Series 1 had 66 cards. Series 2 went up to 132, so 67 through 132. Series 3, 133 to 198. Series 4 was 199 to 264. And then finally, the last orange series was 265 to 330. And so anyway, so that's kind of the breakdown. Now, the card front was, of course, a photo with a caption and a number. Then on the back of the card, there was typically either, for Series 1, it was the story summaries or a puzzle piece. Now, each of the first 3 series, there were 2 puzzles apiece. But the other non-puzzle pieces were story summary, there were actor profiles on the second series, and the third series was just descriptions of either production or a vehicle or something like that. And then the last 2 series, each only had a puzzle, and it was a big puzzle on each one of those. And so that was one of the other fun things about collecting the cards, is that you could make the puzzles that they provided, find out the information about the movie, or if you looked at the series of cards in rapid order, maybe you could get that sort of VCR fill that none of us had at the time that it was going on. So this was my DVR, VCR back in the day, is that I couldn't go to the theater every 3 hours, so I would just look at the cards. In fact, I have mine all in a flip book where I can flip them back and forth. Anyways, that's beside the point. Now the question is, as collectors, you're always wondering about value. Well, not always, but a lot of times you do. There's obviously the nostalgic value, which is priceless, but there are people that look at true value, meaning that if I were to resell this, or is this, I have this one card and it's in outstanding condition, is this worth anything? Now, believe it or not, the Star Wars cards, the first 5 series, there are actually some of those cards that are actually worth a pretty decent amount. And when I say decent amount, the range is usually on the higher end. Now, the typical cards, even if you have a Gem Mint 10, the PSA 10s, for most of the cards are about $75 at best. But there are a handful of them, and when I say handful, I would say probably 20, 25 cards, maybe 30, that are worth greater than several hundred apiece, up to even thousands, $4,000, believe it or not. But anyways, the number one most valuable card was, of course, in the first series, and guess what? Number one. That's what you'd think. And so if you have, there it is. And so Luke is Stormtrooper. So this supposedly is the most valuable gem, if it's a Gem Mint 10 card that is out there. I was looking on one website that, greater than $4,000 for this, if it's in Gem Mint, sharp corners, so on and so forth. So that's the number one card. Now, I've picked out a few others that are in those categories. Of course, they're the main characters. So Princess Leia, the Ben. This is, again, the puzzle piece on the back. This one was always an odd one, which is Darth Vader. This was the villainous Darth Vader. And, of course, I think the underdog is this one, which is Grand Moff Tarkin. Now, these, along with that Stormtrooper, are the most valuable cards of the blue set for the most part. There is a couple of others that are out there that are thought, this is probably one of the most famous ones, which is the 4 of them in the cockpit. This is number, what is it? I'm getting old. Number 31. Again, you can see the puzzle piece on the back is Chewbacca's bandolier. And then this is probably one of my personal favorites, which is the duel. And it's interesting because it's the lightsaber, and it's the English spelling, sabre, even though that's not how you pronounce it. And, of course, the back is another famous puzzle piece of the Hildebrand-like drawing of all the Star Wars characters. All right. So then the next series, of course, got into the red. Now, some of the more valuable cards, which is kind of shocking, would be this one. This one, the Chewbacca's Prisoner, is one of the more valuable cards in the red set. This is number 117. Puzzle piece is the sand, basically Tusken Raider. Anyways, again, if a Gem Mint card like this is, I think, what was this one? 117. This was quite several $1,000s, believe it or not. Shocking. Maybe I should get these, should send these to PSA. And then surprisingly enough, in the red series, again, another Luke Stormtrooper. This is number 125, right? And this is another highly valuable card. So if you have these and they're in, if they're, PSA 8s and 9s, they're probably not going to be that much. But the Gem Mint 10s, they're, less than 10, I think it is less than 10 around. And so if you do have one of those, they can be actually worth quite a bit of money. And again, when you're grading these, you got to look at, it's not only the colors, not only the corners, it's the, is the picture in the middle, as Andrew is kind of insinuating that a lot of them are not. You just have to look at the quality of the card. And you can go to, obviously, PSA's website to get an idea about, what grading is based on. Now, when we get into the Yellow Series, one of the most expensive, or at least famous cards, is this one. Basically, that scandalous look that Han Solo so often had. This is, 139? Hero or mercenary, obviously a little bit of both. Again, picture on the back of the puzzle piece. And then this one is naturally what you would think. I think this is the most, this was what, 180? This is one of the most valuable Leia cards that's available. And then finally, this one of Lord Vader. This isn't even a character shot, it's a drawing or a painting of sorts. But again, there's not many of these in gem mint condition, so it's just something to consider, to look at. If you don't have, PSA as your go-to, you can always look at Beckett. Beckett still has an online guide with prices and different descriptions, conditions, and all that sort of thing. So now you get into the green version. Now the green Series 4, had the most famous card that we all know about, which was the X-rated version of 3PO number 207. This is that card, and of course 3PO is showing his manhood, his giant phallus that we can all see. And obviously they got when they got wind of this, they're like, oh, we might want to change this. So they did, and they sort of went to this version, which kind of takes out the extra length out of his phallus. You can kind of see the two comparisons there. Pretty funny. But in the gem mint, let's say PSA 10 condition in this one, it can go, literally for a few $1,000s. But again, that's very, very, very uncommon to have a PSA 10 of this card. But if you do, it can be worth a few $1,000s. And I think, so there's a few more of the greens that are actually pretty popular. So this is actually a good example. So as you can see on this picture, this is the Vader from the Green Series. This is number 254. You can see how off-center this is. Now whether that's, as Andrew again pointed out, whether that's because they didn't cut them properly. He said they didn't change the blades very often. But this is off-center. So regardless of the coloring, regardless of the sharpness of the corners, this would never get a 10 just because of the off-centering of the actual picture. This is another example of something that's a little bit off-center. This is a very high-quality card and actually one of the more valuable Lukes. But again, the border, the green border on this is different on each side, so therefore not a centered picture, therefore significantly dropping the value. Believe it or not, let's say two of the top 5 cards in terms of sales, guess what they involve? 3PO, which is crazy. But anyways, this is another version. And again, this shows you a way off center picture, which significantly alters the grade of the card itself. And so just, again, if you're kind of halfway into these, don't know much about it, it's always interesting to learn how they grade cards. And I don't know, I just find it interesting. It's something to look into. Again, it's been part of my collection for as long as I can remember. I remember going to convenience stores and trying to steal these because I liked them so much. And I was caught by my mom. so that was always interesting. But I probably had probably 10 times the amount of trading cards as I did figures. And I had a lot of figures, so you can imagine how many cards I had. So anyways, so that was just kind of a quick rundown on the Star Wars series from Topps. Hoped you learned a little bit. I figured I might as well, give a little information on that. Stay safe out there, and we'll see you again at some time in the near future about some other crazy topic. All right, bye-bye.